third episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi has dropped on Disney+, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. My take isn't the right take, it's just my take, and I would love to hear yours. Now, last week, the first 2 episodes dropped, and I only put out a little short giving my quick thoughts on the premiere for the show, and the simple reason for that is that I was out of town actually at Star Wars Celebration when the first episodes dropped. So the reason that I couldn't cover Obi-Wan, Andor, and more that was announced at Star Wars Celebration is because I was at Star Wars Celebration and I just couldn't cover everything while I was there. Now I'm back in Texas and it is time to start talking about it. So I'm gonna have an extended review of the first 3 episodes and my impressions of the first half of the show, and then I'll talk more specifics about episode 3, and let's get started. So if you missed my short last week, essentially I was pretty underwhelmed or disappointed by the first 2 episodes, and I've been very excited for the show. In general, I've wanted Star Wars to stop doing prequels, stop doing stories in this exact same time period with the exact same characters. I want them to go somewhere else and tell new stories in this vast galaxy. The one exception to that, generally speaking, has been Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's been 15 years since Revenge of the Sith. Ewan McGregor has now aged into a new phase of life, and Obi-Wan was just sitting there for 20 years. Certainly some interesting stuff happened in there. And so that just seemed like the one where there's a lot of story potential to flesh out the galaxy, inform A New Hope in some interesting ways while following up the prequels in enticing ways. So I've been excited about this show for that reason, especially when they bring back Hayden and a number of other things. Just kind of make me go, okay, this could be really cool. I dug the trailers. And then the first 2 episodes frustrated me because all the things I wanted to be excited about, I thought worked. Ewan McGregor, still great in the role. And then with the character, I feel like where they're putting Obi-Wan as someone that's losing hope, that is a broken hero, I felt, at least thus far, this is a better version of what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi. I am not a fan of Last Jedi. I don't think what they did with Luke Skywalker worked because it was too big of a jump from where we last saw him to where we see him in Last Jedi. And just a couple of flashbacks and some exposition doesn't fill in the gap for me as to why he is so cynical as to toss his lightsaber behind him and everything he's saying. It's too big of a leap for me. But with Obi-Wan, he watched Order 66. He had to kill in his mind, kill his student that was like a brother to him. He had to watch the Republic collapse. Everything he believed in has collapsed, but he's also still on mission. He's still watching Luke. He's still bringing him toys. He's still talking about wanting to train him. And so he has lost much of his hope. He is a broken hero that doesn't think that he doesn't know what he believes in anymore, but he also hasn't given up on the mission yet. And I think that is a much more reasonable leap. We've seen what he saw, this collapse, to understand why he's in this broken state. 10 years have passed, but he's also still on mission. So I thought it was a better version of what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi. Like I said, Ewan McGregor is great in the part. And then even the idea of making the plot about Princess Leia and her being rescued, I kind of dig that. I think it creates a little bit of some like continuity issues with that initial message in A New Hope and the way that she phrases it. And you served with my father. It seems like there's some gaps in that I don't think is quite right. But in general, I think it kind of fits. It gives a reason to kind of send him out. Why would he leave Luke if he's been sitting there for 10 years to go on this big, gigantic adventure? Leia was the person that could do that. And then it's just great to see Jimmy Smits showing back up. I thought the tension with Joel Edgerton, the uncle, made sense. It fleshes out A New Hope and shows those different worldviews of these figures that are trying to protect Luke, but they perceive of that in very different ways. So all of that's working for me. And then it just felt like they made stupid mistakes in just the way it played out, just some lazy direction. The chase sequence where Leia is captured is shockingly bad. This is Star Wars. This is $150, $200 million budget each episode, $20, $30 million budget per episode. And the chase, it's literally like adults like awkwardly running as a child speeds ahead of them. And then she ducks under a branch and the adult goes, oh, 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 and can't get past a branch. This is Star Wars. The budget's way too big for something so lazy as that. And then the other one in there is there's some stunt casting that just pulled me out of it. Like the guy that kidnaps Leia is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who was in Back to the Future 2 and 3's Needles. But he's one of these guys, he's not really an actor, he hasn't done that much stuff. And so when you're just watching Star Wars and it's like, Flea, he's right there. I was watching with my wife and, she wouldn't know names and things like that. She just immediately saw the guy and she goes, oh, it's that guy. You shouldn't be watching something and immediately go, oh, it's that guy. If it's not meaningful, if it's not something that really brings weight to it, it's just like stunt casting that makes you go, wait, that guy's in it. Or in my case, Red Hot Chili Peppers bass player who sometimes plays on stage naked with a sock covering his decency, however you want to say that, making him decent by putting a sock on. Like, that's who Flea is, and then he's suddenly in Star Wars, and so it just pulled me out of it. It just kind of broke the immersion of the story. And then when you get to the second episode, likewise, I'm a big Kumail Nanjiani fan. You can see all my reviews of stuff over the last several years. I find him funny, I find him charming, and I want to see him in more things. But when you just drop him into Star Wars and have him doing his usual shtick, not a transformative performance, not covered in makeup or anything like that, just him doing his usual comedic timing, his usual phrasing of things, and it's his face right there. I'm looking at Kumail Nanjiani, I'm looking at this con artist that's cheating people pretending to be a Jedi. And it was frustrating because I think the idea of the character is actually quite compelling. Like, I liked the idea of this guy that when you first meet him, he seems like just this con artist, but then you realize he's not like a mean-spirited con artist. He's taking people's money, but he doesn't seem cynical about it. And then you realize, oh, he's actually anti-Empire, he's pro-rebellion, and he's pro-Jedi by the end of it. And he's willing to put his life on the line as soon as he sees something to believe in. That's a great little character moment. That's a great little journey. But because it was played by someone that was just doing their usual stick, it just kind of pulled me out of it. That's frustrating. And so, some of the other acting just felt off to me. Was it Reva character, our Inquisitor that's ambitious and took out the Grand Inquisitor. This has been a big, gigantic controversy over the internet the last couple of days because the racist side of the internet has just been going after her, the crazy side. And obviously, the worst part about that is that there's racists being awful human beings over the internet and being cruel to another human. That's, of course, the worst part to it. But it also distracts from I think her performance is off. I don't find her convincing. And so it leads to this conversation on Twitter where, like, of course, they're just doing this. And there's valid criticisms there that get lost because of the crazies that are just racists. And that's the other side of toxic fandom of trying to find a nefarious motive for why anyone would criticize a character. It's like, I felt the performance was off. I don't find her convincing. I feel like she's overcooking all of her aggressiveness. And so I just see a person overacting. And so it pulled me out of it. So I just didn't think that she fit, and whether she was miscast or the direction was bad for whatever reason, I don't think she did a great job in the part. And then the third one on there was also, I think trying to do Princess Leia as a child is very tricky. I know a lot of people seem to find she was very charming and fun and fit perfectly, but Princess Leia has this spunky personality. She's got a lot of bite to her. And when you combine that with childish immaturity, it's frustrating. So you're in the middle of like being chased by stormtroopers and she's not listening to an adult to do her own thing. On the one hand, that does sound like something that Princess Leia would do. Would she do it as a child? I don't know. But it's a frustrating thing to happen. And like, this guy's trying to save you and you're running off doing stupid things. That's frustrating. Is it in character? Maybe. I feel like the writing for her is very strange because she cuts back and forth between the force sensitive side to her that acts like she's 25 and then the other side to her where she's supposed to be 10. They cast an 8-year-old and she's acting 6 at times of just like doing her own thing, not listening. And like, I have an 8-year-old, I have a 10-year-old. And as soon as I look at this girl, like, that is not a 10-year-old child. Now, they're in a galaxy far, far away, so maybe 10 years old means something different there, but that is clearly not a 10-year-old. She's not acting like a 10-year-old until she starts acting like a 25-year-old. So it felt uneven. So it didn't quite work for me. So anyway, that's my extended kind of thoughts on the first few episodes. It's frustrating because I think the basic idea, the plot's right, Ewan McGregor's on point, certain aspects of the tone fit, and then all of a sudden it's like this goofy chase sequence. And all of a sudden, Kumail Nanjiani playing himself as a guy pretending to be a con artist who's actually a believer in the Jedi. And then suddenly flees there. There's just these things that kind of feel off about it. And then I don't know if they're going to where they're going with the Grand Inquisitor thing, where the Grand Inquisitor is killed in episode 2, but wasn't he in Rebel? Like, how does that fit in the timeline? Isn't that a big continuity issue? So just a bunch of stuff when I first watched the first 2 episodes that pulled me out of it. And I rewatched them a second time. And it affirmed that, especially with the Reva stuff. I watched it initially with my friend Griffin in California, like right when it dropped at midnight in California time. Watched it a few days later with my wife. All 3 of us were like, our performance feels off. And I don't want to say, like, I'm not rooting against her or anything like that. I just didn't think it worked. And it's just really frustrating that the crazy side of the internet is making it so that it's tough to even say that without feeling like people are going to be out to get you and assume the worst of you. But that's the internet. The internet loves to bring out the worst in people, unfortunately. So all that said, what did I think about episode 3? Let's move on to it. So in general, I felt episode 3 was an improvement. I would say it's easily the best episode thus far. Maybe a lot of that is just borrowed excitement from Darth Vader, of course, showing up and actually getting in on the action, having a lot more screen time than I was expecting this early in the season. So maybe it's just borrowed excitement for that. I think some of it is that it just didn't do anything that blatantly frustrated me as much as the first 2 episodes. And then I think some of it is you watch the first 2 episodes, you get disappointed, it lowers your expectations. You watch the 3rd episode, it's pretty exciting. Darth Vader shows up and it exceeds your expectations by a good bit and maybe raises your excitement for the future episodes kind of moving forward. But I think it kind of got things back on track a little bit of, unless I missed something, there wasn't stunt casting, there wasn't anything that just kind of pulled me out of it. We just got to see the next chapter in this adventure. And I thought there were some flaws in the mix here still, too. So real quick on those. They go to the most boring looking planet in the Star Wars universe. Have we been to a place this boring looking at like this where they go? It looks like someplace, 3 miles that way in Texas, of just like dry, grassy fields that's just lifeless. And they kind of tie it into the plot line of the Empire's bled this mining community dry, and so it's boring looking. But there's all sorts of places you can go that the Empire could have mined it, and it's still interesting looking, not looking like they just found whatever place is available down the road. I mean, it's just Star Wars is known for its extravagant, exciting locations. Even Tatooine is boring on the one hand and drab, which is built into it a little bit, but it's also sand looking. Like it's covered in sand. It's interesting compared to where, unless you live in a desert, it's interesting looking. And then in this one, they go to the place that perhaps it's just because I live in Texas and everywhere outside of the suburbs looks like the dry places is just boring looking. There's just some lazy writing in there of, I believe in the last episode, they showed holograms of Obi-Wan's face. Like I believe they said that. And then in this one, they're on a little transport ship with stormtroopers like, we're looking for a Jedi. And his face is right there. And they didn't send the hologram out. They didn't say this is what the guy looks like. We're looking for a Jedi, but we don't know what he looks like. He's right there in front of you. So who are you looking? What are you looking for if him sitting right in front of you isn't enough? So that's just like struck me as like, seems like really lazy writing. There's no explanation for what's kind of going on here. And then at the end of it, I have this big battle, Obi-Wan with Vader, and we'll get into that, and I'll praise all that. I have a lot of positive things to say about that. But then to escape, lady shoots something, makes the fire reappear, and you got a bunch of stormtroopers and Vader just standing there. They've got a fire right here in front of them, and droid guy can slowly walk up and grab him, and they can escape. And they're like, how are we going to track him? What could we possibly do? We made it across the whole galaxy in 5 minutes, but how could we get the guy on the other side of fire? All their resources are gone. All their vehicles are gone. He's going to escape because he's on the other side of fire. And then literally someone says, how could we find him now? He's right there. Vader could just go and move the fire. Vader could go and pull them towards him. And I can mildly understand, like, Vader's intentionally toying with him. Half the fun is the hunt for Vader. Perhaps that's where this is going. But when you're just watching the stormtroopers and other Inquisitors are like, what could we do? There's fire between us. This just seems like really lazy writing. And I touched on this just a little bit. The other one being intergalactic travel suddenly takes no time. So the one drone deal spots them, sends a message, and then immediately Vader and the whole crew are there before Obi-Wan can take off with his ally friend. They're just there in the right place at like 10 feet away. Like, they're right there. They're outside the door. That's how quick they got there and found them. Okay. It feels like, once again, some lazy, convenient writing. But like I said, on the positive side, felt like this one found its footing. It found its pacing a good bit of what does an episode feel like that doesn't need stunt casting and doesn't have a bunch of awful choreography to it. So you get some nice little character moments between Leia and Obi-Wan where she is aware that something is up with him and that he's hiding things. And of course he's hiding, knowing who her father is, knowing who her mother is, this whole backstory of the connection to her that he doesn't want to share, doesn't feel like he can share. And she can sense that. She's aware of that. Now, some of this feels a little bit overstated because she didn't do any of this stuff in A New Hope or like the very end of Empire Strikes Back. She does a little bit of it as Luke is reaching out to her. And then you get some senses of it later, but like, it's like very prominent that she's just sitting there and knows what's going on with people in a way that it didn't seem like she was doing that before in this way, but fair enough. Star Wars has always kind of cheated the continuity a little bit to fit with everything they're trying to do with everything. But just real nice little moments in there, kind of bonding and just kind of exploring what's going on with each of them, as well as Leia's understanding of who her real parents are, who they're not, all this stuff, and kind of her processing that. Just add some new layers and intrigue to the characters. And then, of course, when you're getting just Vader in action and, like, yeah, this whole concept, there's 20 years of Vader in the suit, and we've seen very little of that. And so having this whole idea of, like, he's got these Inquisitors that are hunting down for his purposes, and then he's going out to track down Obi-Wan and wants to make him pay, it's just cool to see that. And then, likewise, how much Vader's just grown in the dark side of the Force and is incredibly powerful, and Obi-Wan has intentionally been suppressing his powers and isn't in touch with it like he was before. And so you're seeing this very broken Obi-Wan, and Vader immediately realizes it, is just toying with him and wants to make him suffer. And so, yeah, this fight it's not particularly exciting on a fight level because Obi-Wan is just so outmatched at this particular moment. But all the character elements realize the rage channeled towards Obi-Wan, leading up to this final little bit of like, what is Vader's end goal in all of this? And you get to this moment where he lights up the ground on fire, and his goal is to drag Obi-Wan through it. And you're like, oh, that's okay, that makes sense. He really wants this guy to pay physically and torture him in the worst ways possible. Gotcha. All right, I'm tracking with you. That's pretty fun. That's pretty cool. And by fun, I mean sick and twisted in the best way possible, in the way that Star Wars needs. But I mean, even before that, Vader shows up and he's trying to bait out Obi-Wan. And so he starts just pulling people out of their houses, and their child runs out and just snaps a kid's neck for saying, "Don't hurt my dad." Like, it is leaning into just how dark and sick Vader is and irredeemable, which makes his redemption that much more profound when it happens, obviously, when Luke comes into the picture. But so I thought this was the episode that pulled things together better. Also, I just don't understand how some of these just sloppy, lazy writing is getting through. I just don't get it. And then in general, also, we're watching episode 3, and my 10-year-old son goes, "Hey, Dad, I put something together. Obi-Wan is Mando, and Leia is Grogu," which, like, that is correct. It's the same story template. You have a reluctant hero that finds a child and then is on the run. In each episode, they go to a new planet where someone says, "Hey, you need to go here to get this thing," and then they have to go to this thing, and then you have to go and rescue the child, and then you have to... It's the same thing as The Mandalorian. It's the same formula. Obviously, there's wildly different emotions to it and things like that, but sure. But at the end of the day, the same basic setup as The Mandalorian. And not that I'd pieced that together pretty quickly as soon as Princess Leia was like needing to be rescued by Obi-Wan, but even my 10-year-old son figured out, wait a minute, they're doing the same exact thing as they did with that other show. Are you that light on tricks? Like how do you... I don't understand how that we're having these lazy writing and then copying the formula of The Mandalorian to do this show. So, I'm enjoying it enough. I like it. I'm invested to see where it's going. It just feels like it's not all that difficult to have a better version of this show. Don't have stupid writing choices. Don't have stunt casting. Don't have a chase sequence where people are like running into a stick and just falling over so a child can run away. Don't do that. It's easy to not do that. It's really easy to not cast Flea. But there it is. I just don't know how you make these types of mistakes. There's no excuse for it. So I like going off to a galaxy far, far away and having these adventures. I love spending more time with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. I love getting to see more Darth Vader. I just wish the writing was on par with that opportunity. And I just don't think there's an excuse for some of the stuff, the choices that they're making, the mistakes that they're making. I just don't get it. So that's where I'm at. I know a lot of people are loving it. A lot of people are eating it up. And to some extent, I get that it is really cool to see Ewan McGregor in that role again. And there is some really great stuff in here. I think there is also still a good bit of room for improvement. Episode 3 was an improvement. Continue down that path. By the time we get to the 6th episode, we'll have some fantastic Star Wars, but some clunkiness in these first 3. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much. Bye-bye.